In the midst of all of this, I ended up having two massive near fatal strokes in front of a pie shop. So if you ever want to understand what poetry is, have a stroke in front of a pie shop.
Christopher Quigley's story begins on Sunday drives through rural Manitoba. A 1966 Pontiac Parisienne, an aunt with a bottle of wine in the back seat, and a young queer kid learning to build and fabricate by hand. Those drives weren't just about cars, they were about collaboration, curiosity, and the spark that ignited a career in custom fabrication and large-scale public art. He's an interdisciplinary artist and designer living in Nova Scotia now, whose work weaves together entropy, impermanence, and transformation, themes that echo his own journey through near-fatal strokes, reinvention, and embracing the fragile beauty of decay. One of his projects, Transformation of Dangerous Spaces, is a bold, immersive public art installation confronting the brutal realities of gender-based violence and toxic masculinity. It's a rare kind of work, one that challenges viewers to step inside and reckon with where violence starts, how it spreads, and how we might begin to dismantle it together. Christopher's art questions what fades away over time, but it also asks what rises from those breaks, how decay can shape new spaces for healing and accountability, especially for queer folks navigating worlds that often demand exceptionalism just to be seen. We'll talk about collaboration, identity, the power of creating good in a complicated world, and what it means to build a legacy when impermanence rules everything. This will be an important conversation you won't want to miss. This is Art in the Raw. All right, Christopher Quigley, welcome to Art in the Raw. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Your childhood Sunday drives in a 66 Pontiac Parisienne with your Aunt Wendy are described as foundational to your love for custom fabrications.
Yes, sir.
Can you paint a sensory picture of those moments, the sounds and textures and emotions, and how they ignited your artistic identity?
Well, having to learn with your hands and learn that any great project or anything that's a final project requires a tremendous amount of collaboration. There's not one person that rebuilds a car. There's a body person, there's a paint person, there's an interiors person, there's an engine person. There's all these different people that come together to be able to make one really beautiful thing happen. My Aunt Wendy and my Aunt Wendy was kind of she was one of those kind of women that just bought things without a lot of thought put behind them. And she bought two cars, and it was a 66 Dodge Dart and the 66 Pontiac Parisienne. And unfortunately, when I look back on it, she sold the Dodge Dart. And I look back on it and go, you know what, we got rid of the wrong car. But what we ended up doing is that I learned that I didn't have a lot of limits about what I thought I was capable of doing. So I would do things on the car. I would pick up a book, and it was a book, and I would learn how to do things. I pulled the carpet out because I wanted to replace the carpet. But, other people got involved in the car to put the engine in and showed me how to do the brakes. But we would take it out on Sunday drives. And we lived out in the middle we were about 3 hours north of Fargo, North Dakota, in a little town called Portage la Prairie, Manitoba in Canada. And our Sunday drives were driving around all the back roads with Wendy in the back seat. And I must have been about 13 or 14 years old, driving my aunt around the backcountry. And those were our Sunday drives. And so when I was in interior design, I knew how to collaborate. I knew how to pull things together, and I knew how to get people together to be able to make stuff. And so I fell into custom fabrication on the interior design side, and really kind of etched out a really fantastic little career for myself. So much so that I was offered a position to take over the US business for a custom fabricator in the US. And I got to move to Manhattan for 10 years and run that. And now I have had my own company called Agency Custom.
Hmm.
And we did a lot of custom fabrication for public artists and for architects, making architectural statements. And we're just finishing one right now, which is a 28-story media facade for a company called CoStar, which is one of the US's largest and most ambitious public art displays that are going to be going in Richmond, Virginia. So when my background really kind of helped, the acumen that I had acquired, I was able to parlay into becoming my own artist and doing my own things and saying, like, you know what, I have a voice. I have things I want to make. And I just decided that it was my turn, that it was my turn to make stuff. It was my turn to create. It was my turn to make the stuff that I wanted to make. That's kind of how driving a 66 Pontiac Parisienne led to what I'm doing now.
I love that story. And I think of a 66 Pontiac Parisienne and I think of a drag queen with the big, bonnet on driving down the street, kind of like Tu Wong Fu style or something like that.
Well, if there's any more that I can add to this, my aunt would sit in the back with a bottle of wine, and I
I
would
love
drive her
that.
around.
I love that story.
Yeah, those were our Sunday afternoons as kids. It was fantastic.
So when you relocated from Manitoba to Manhattan, that must have involved some profound cultural and geographic shifts for you. Did that physical transformation mirror your journey towards your queer creativity in spaces that challenge conventions?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, like, where I ended up from Manitoba, I went to Vancouver, I went to the far west coast, and then to Manhattan. And I've been in an industry that's really has been predominantly overrun by middle-aged men,
Hmm.
heterosexual middle-aged men. And my place at the table was something that I had to create for myself. I didn't have the access and I wasn't invited to the same tables that they were at. And I make fun of it in a little way. And I want to use this tongue in cheek, but I call them mediocre middle-aged heterosexual white guys. They just got to phone stuff in. They didn't have to be exceptional. They didn't have to do anything remarkable. For me to be taken seriously in the industry, because I'm dealing with architects and developers and contractors and general contractors, and there's not a lot of gay guys in that industry. And where I fit in was on the custom side, was that it was like I had to call it bespoke because it was a different, better term.
Hmm.
But I didn't have the opportunity to be mediocre. I didn't get that chance. And I don't think that, guys like you and me don't get an opportunity to be mediocre, and we align remarkably well with women in that realm because we're all after the same kind of privilege.
Hmm.
We're wanting access to it, and so we align with our allies, which are straight women, and because we're after the same thing, we're after the same spot at the table, and straight women and gay men don't get an opportunity to just be mediocre. We
Yep.
don't get taken seriously.
I hear
So
that many times from
yeah,
the straight women. Other marginalized groups will say the same thing, that you can't just be good at your job to do well in your career. You have to be exceptional.
yes, and it's exhausting.
Hmm.
It's exhausting. And so in my industry, I was really able to carve out a remarkable career for myself. I did very well. I've done some really massive projects all around North America. I worked for the company that built the largest outdoor chandelier in Cleveland, Ohio. And
Wow.
if there's any place that needs a chandelier, it was
It's
downtown
Cleveland,
Cleveland.
Ohio.
And it's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest outdoor chandelier. And it
That's
straddles
cool.
the financial and the theater district. And so these sort of things are things that I was able to kind of like hang my hat on because these are things that I was a part of when I was with this company. When I started my own company and I was doing this on my own, it was the same thing. I had to pick up the biggest, the best, the most energetic or the most advanced projects I could find just so that I could continue being taken seriously because I didn't want to take just a restaurant job or a hotel job. I wanted the big casino job. I wanted to do, like South Dakota State University. We built a giant chandelier for them, a big custom chandelier that was based off of an umbrella that got turned inside out on my way to a meeting. That was the inspiration for it. So I have to admit, I've done very well in this industry. And it's not because I look at it as like being gay had a really big part in it because I just know what's good.
Yeah.
And we know what's good.
Yeah.
And I relate to
It comes with
people.
the gay gene.
Yeah, exactly. But I also learned how to code shift. Well, those things are just get really tiresome after a while because you're there, this idea of being authentic to yourself. It's like, well, authenticity is dependent on the situation and the person. Authenticity is a mask that we put on, and for many years I was like, what part of me is the authentic part that people are seeing? I
Authenticity can require some vulnerability, and that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, so I really liked what I've done and like how it's transformed me. And when I got to Manhattan and I was running around the city, it was a fantastic growing experience because it was just I got to learn how to do business hard. And it was that's a tough town, man. Like it was, and now I was doing projects all over the United States and Canada and Europe and doing some really amazing things. And so where this left was I left in 2022, November of 2022, and I came back to Canada. And I really wasn't sure what I was going to be doing, but I just drove across the country from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast until I ran out of land. And in the midst of all of this, I ended up having two massive near fatal strokes in front of a
Mm.
pie shop. So if you ever want to understand what poetry is, have a stroke in front of a pie shop. It was, I'm like, that is poetic. That was a fantastic thing, but that shifted that transformed me in a way that I can recognize. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can see the transition point from where it was until I was in the hospital for weeks. Having to walk again, having to like coordinate where sound was coming from, and even getting my hands to work properly took weeks. And when the lights came back on, I was like, I don't think I can. I don't think I can do this for other people anymore because this just happened out of the blue, and I had no pre-warning. I had no clue, and it just turned into one of those things of, wow, all of this could be taken away really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very lucky. I didn't end up in a wheelchair. I didn't end up dead. I wasn't in a vegetative state. I still have all of my faculties, and I can still ride a motorcycle. And that was one of the things that I ended up buying after I got to be able to have, because I had to, I had my balance checked a lot. But I was like, if I'm still upright, I'm going to ride a motorcycle. I'm
Wow.
doing all the things that I needed to do. And now instead of just doing really well, I need to do some good. And so what I'm working on now are projects that do some good. That's what I like to think anyway. Maybe patting myself on the back, but I do really want to do some good and leave a legacy behind that is good.
Yeah. Maybe if Aunt Wendy was still here, she'd be in that sidecar on that motorcycle with that bottle of wine.
She's still here and she's not she doesn't have the wine anymore, but she likes she's got a little life in our little town, and she's got a good thing going for herself now. So it's a good thing.
You've cited entropy and impermanence as
Yes,
core
sir.
themes in your work. Was there a pivotal before and after moment when you realized that decay could be a generative force in your art?
So yeah, the first piece that because I have about in my repertoire right now, I've got about 25 years worth of work ahead of me that I can create. I look at it like I've got about 20 years worth of work. And when I was first developing the first piece, which is actually a play, it's based on death. It's based on being able to leave a legacy behind. And then I was starting to work on some public art sculptures that are very much about entropy and decay. They start off as one form and dissolve into another and dissolve into something else. But there's an ephemeral nature to everything that I'm making, is that it's not meant to be permanent. It's meant to eventually go away. But some of these will have lives much longer than I will ever have on Earth. The ephemeral series of sculptures that I'm working on, those are meant to last about 250 years, and they dissolve. They dissolve away over a very slow period of time. And that is, to take this idea of like we have control over our elements and minerals and structure and steel, but over time we can allow that just to dissolve away from the natural elements, and they dissolve into other items. They dissolve into stalactites and stalagmites, and then they crystallize away, and then they just eventually just completely disappear. And it's like anything that we make. Everything that we build, everything that we make is ephemeral, no matter as long lasting as we think things are, or as eternal as we like to believe things are. Everything in our lives is temporary. Everything. And when I had the stroke, all of this stuff became very clear. Like it was really April 23rd, 2023 at 10 a.m. is when everything in my life changed. The way I saw the world, how I experienced it, how I feel it now is vastly, it's diametrically opposed to where I was on April 22nd.
I can imagine.
I can't explain it any better than that. It's just, I just realized that nothing that we have, like all the things that we have, all of the things like our paintings, our artwork, our clothes, our cars, our carpets, everything, nothing comes with us. And I learned that in the hospital because when I had the first stroke, they figured it out and they're like, we don't think that we know you're going to have another one because your type of stroke comes in clusters. So we expect that you might have another one or two more, but we don't expect that you're going to survive because the first stroke I had was so close to my brainstem. I was told that I should call my family and get my affairs in order. And by the time that my mother would get there, I was probably not going to still be here. So it shifted when you're presented with your own mortality in that way. I think in movies and books and things that we're always told it's going to be this epiphanal moment, but it was matter of fact. There was no emotion attached to it. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I was like, okay, yeah, I got to call my mother. I need to take care of this. I need to get this done. I need these things done. And then I realized that how I was going to die, I had no choice. There was no choice in this, that it was just going to happen, that every time I went to sleep, I wasn't sure if I was going to wake up.
Wow.
So that was how my world shifted. It just completely changed. And when I have a voice, I have creativity that I have access to, I have resources, I have business acumen, I have all of these things that instead of doing it for other people, I need to do it for me. I just need to I have to leave something behind that is me. That is not other people. I need to have authorship. I need to have that authorship. So
how long do you anticipate the pieces that you've done that are slowly decaying to last?
about 200 years is the estimated. So they're made out of blocks of minerals, everything from quartz to salt to gypsum. They're all inert, and when they mix together, they are non-toxic. They don't other than the salt, they don't have a mix to them that becomes toxic. But quartz can take anywhere from 50 to 75 years on its own to dissolve. There'll be other materials and other minerals that are being extracted out of the St. Lawrence River on the East Coast and pressed into 3 foot by 3 foot cubes. And those will be kind of left to the elements in these 30-foot sculptures that will just decay over time.
And how long have they been there?
These are still in the works. These are still on the works.
Gotcha. Okay.
The project that I'm currently involved in at breakneck speed is, and you've used the word a couple of times, is the project that I'm working on is actually called Transformation of Dangerous Spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
This more focuses on societal decay and the erosion of systems. And that's the one that kind of became pushed to the forefront because I thought that it was going to happen or it was planned. I was just asked.
So let's dive into that real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Your shift from fabricating for others to creating these immersive installations like Transformation for Dangerous Spaces is quite different from what you were doing before. Describe the first time you witness audiences step inside the collapse of your work. What surprised you about their engagement?
So when I was sending out the proposals, and where the proposal started from was from an experience that in my small town, there's a woman that lived here. Her name was Elaine Mosher. And I always have to make sure that I mention her name. But she was the 6th woman since September of 2024 2024, that had been murdered by her partner. And I know this is a kind of a downturn in the conversation, but it affected me. And I live in a town of 900 people now. And so it's a very tight knit community. It is remarkably beautiful and very supportive. And when Elaine Mosher died, it affected me. And it affected me in a way that I wasn't really prepared for. And I knew I had to be involved somehow. I had to be involved because this has now been called an epidemic in Canada. The intimate partner violence and gender-based violence statistics here are off the charts. They are remarkably stubborn. And so I went to one of the executive directors of a transition house with a housing plan, because the idea was to take a house like where Elaine had been murdered and convert it into something that was going to be positive, like another transition house where other women that are leaving the transition service can be reintegrated back into the community in a nice, comfortable place. So we'd be transforming that space. And the project that I had been involved was like this idea of being able to do something like that. And the executive director, Kellyanne Hamshaw, said, I actually looked you up and I see your history and I see what you've done. Would you be interested in coming up and developing an educational piece for men that would educate them on intimate partner violence and gender-based violence, and not so much as an awareness campaign, but more like something that would point out where it happens and where it starts. And when I was sending out the proposal for people, the response back that I got was it was incredibly visceral. People said they had a really heavy emotional reactions to just my proposal because it is a lived experience. Like, I grew up much like you did. I grew up listening to homophobic slurs and misogyny and how power and how violence is transferred in the boys' bathroom or in the locker room. Mm-hmm. This is where we learned it. This is where it was. That's where that transmutation of information comes along, is in those rooms behind closed doors. Boys learn it from their dads, and then they transfer this information amongst each other, and they trade it like trading cards. And now we're in a position where young men and boys are being indoctrinated at scale online with men that have platforms and have been monetized and have an audience and a fan base. And that's the troubling part of this, is that we've gone from this analog position and this analog source of information transfer. I'm 52. So for me, this was pre-internet. So, the locker room, like I got physically assaulted many, many times in the locker room. Mm-hmm. Am I allowed to swear on this?
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
I got the shit kicked out of me in the bathrooms, in the hallways, in the locker rooms. I've been sexually assaulted in a bathroom. These are places where this to me was a dangerous space that needed to have some light shed on it. And so the proposal itself just garnered so much response from women's organizations across the country that the main response that came back was that I had to have trauma-informed therapists at the beginning and at the end of the installations, so that there is informed, explicit consent of people going into this to understand that these 8 stalls are going to be remarkably emotional, because they focus on 8 separate themes of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. Starting off from, the analog to the digital source of information transfer, to consent and how young men and boys look at consent now, which is far different than the way that I was taught. I see the t-shirt you're wearing, and the groups that I grew up with as a young man, these were much older men, but consent was something that was very much part of my upbringing as a young gay boy. Mm-hmm. There was no play, there was no anything that happened without explicit consent. And that seems to be taking a very decided left turn. It's not it's as it once was. And then going through from consent all the way to how much damage and how much violence can occur in the amount of time that it takes a human body to evacuate its bladder, which is about 21 seconds. It takes you 21 seconds to pee, and the amount of violence that can happen within 21 seconds. Uh-huh. Like the last 21 seconds of a 911 call, or the last 21 seconds of somebody locked in the bathroom waiting for police to show up. So these spaces and these 8 stalls are remarkably emotional. They are meant to confront, and they are meant to be intense, and they are interactive, and they're immersive, and they are going to provide a reckoning. But it's to point a finger at where, at one of the spaces, I'm not saying this is the only space, but one of the spaces where young men and boys pick up the information that they get, and where they learn how to even express violence is in those rooms.
Do
I
you
hope
find
that was a
no,
good answer.
that's a very powerful description of it. And when I came across it and reviewed your website myself, I found it very powerful because I had my own experiences in school with violence in locker rooms, and it brought back a lot of that for me, especially as a young, I didn't know it at the time, a young gay boy, um, how much your peers can detect that and um, seize on it and attack it to protect their own masculinity, I think.
No, you're very true. That's exactly a great thought.
Yeah. Do you find that queer audiences and straight audiences that come to the exhibition react similarly or differently?
So that's an interesting comment, because I was thinking about this, is that the regardless of, like, I look at this as that I just happen to be the person that was developing this, and I just happen to be gay. But is it gay art? No. Is it queer art? No. It's just art. It's
Uh-huh.
just meant to be an immersive piece. The universal experience that I have, that you have, that even trans women have, is the socialization. That regardless of where they're at now in where we're at now in our lives, our original socialization and culturalization was this. It was the universal experience, is this level of humanity that we experience, or this inhumanity that we experience, regardless of our gayness or our queerness or our transness. That the overarching theme through all of this was about masculinity and what that was and how that was being portrayed. Um, I've had questions been asked about why this doesn't explicitly include trans women, and I'm like, well, I also, it doesn't also explicitly include, you know, other, minorities and people of different races, because the universal experience is the same.
Uh-huh.
There are some cultural differences between things. The there isn't a explicit mention of gayness to it, or even transness, but it's all very implicit. It's all built into the superstructure and into how I've developed this entire structure, and these 8 stalls and the lighting and the sounds, and all of these things are all because of the experience and the lived experience that I've had. I don't have a trans experience, but I can understand the perspective. But the implicitness of it, I don't believe that it has to be explicit to really get the point across, because, like, I think that I'm just going to repeat what I've just said already, is that the universal experience is the same, that the socialization is the same.
Uh-uh.
Yours, mine, my neighbor, the kid I went to school with, we all had the same experience. We all did. And this piece reveals that, and it exposes it, and it allows people that have gone into it to go, oh, right, this is something that I experienced. Because the point about all of this with intimate partner violence and gender-based violence is that it's a mess that men created. And women and women's groups have endured this for decades, trying to fix it. This is intimate partner violence and gender-based violence is an issue that men created. And going back to it, it's like, this is an issue that women have had to endure, and have had to create systems to protect themselves against men. And for men to be involved in this, and then in Canada, we have something that was called the Mass Casualty Report, that very clearly and explicitly asked for men to step up to be part of the solution, to be part of the way that this is going to be fixed and how to fix this and be involved in it, and that men need to step up. And so when Kellyanne offered me this challenge to say, can you create something? This was me stepping up. This was my ability, but the way that it had to be brought forward was that for men to kind of accept their responsibility and to acknowledge, they have to accept where it comes from and look at it and identify it and point at it and kind of understand. It's like, oh yeah, this is one of the spaces where I learned this. And this is how men get to be involved. Even growing up, like, let's be honest, have I been a saint? Absolutely not. Have I laughed at things I shouldn't have? Yeah. Have I told jokes I shouldn't have? Absolutely. Have I used words? Have I said the things? Yes, I have, because that's what was taught to me. And that's what I thought was funny, or that's what I thought was part of it was normalized. And then the violence gets normalized. So transformation of dangerous spaces is meant to be an open dialogue, but it's meant to confront. It has to confront. My original concept with this was to, quite honestly, just push men into the deep end of the pool. But as more people got involved in this and were consulting on it, I was told that I had to. There were things like the trauma informed practice that I had to include in this, because that wasn't something that I was prepared to do. I was like, men need to be punished and these guys need, but as I was working through it, I'm like, we actually have to extend a hand, and they have to be walked through this. And the trauma informed practice, by having a therapist at the beginning explaining the piece and then having a debrief at the end with your group, was meant to allow that to happen and allow for some level of closure and healing and discussion to say, hey, how did this affect you? What did you think?
Want to strip down and connect with a community that celebrates real bodies, real stories, and unforgettable adventures? Check out Go Naked Magazine, a bold, body positive magazine for gay male nudists. And if you're ready to turn the page and travel, Go Naked Travel curates incredible clothing optional getaways around the world. Think sun, skin, and seriously good vibes. Subscribe today at gonakedmagazine.com and gonakedtravels.com. What do you find is the response of men and trans women and others that come through this process when they go through that counseling session at the end? What do you see that their response is to it?
So where we're at, I want to just clarify that right now this project is in its civic outreach. We're actually going to be fabricating this in 2026. So right now, what we're dealing with is getting men's groups and women's groups and getting federal, municipal, and provincial or /state approval and endorsement on this. Quite honestly, about where I've had the most success is with all of the women's organizations. They've been providing me with unbelievable levels of endorsement and beautiful letters to get this project endorsed and supported. Where I've struggled, and I was surprised by, where I've struggled is with the men's organizations, that they're slow on the uptick on this, on picking up on this, or wanting to be a part of it, or to have some involvement in authorship on the education side. The piece itself is going to remain artistically sovereign to the way that I had developed it. However, the men's organizations, I've put out a call to say, like, look, if you want to have authorship in this, the education that gets put out is something you can have a part in. But that's been the difficult part, is getting the men's groups involved, which has been very disappointing.
Yeah.
For their
the
own
ones
reasons.
that need to hear it
And
the most.
Some of it I can understand. Yeah. And so the ones that need to see it the most or be a part of this the most still aren't. And I'm not saying that these men's organizations aren't doing the work, and they are doing very, very good work. One organization that I am getting endorsement from, called Guys Work. There are reasons why they are unable to, but other organizations just have not been coming up to support as emphatically as I had expected. On the trans side, I haven't had a lot of interaction, because I think that when I explain why there isn't any explicit trans content in this, it's that even trans women at some point in their life were socialized as boys. And they have that socialization the same way that women are socialized in a very specific way. We still have that, and trans women have that. They have that socialization.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is some commonality with this. That again, this is just a human experience that we've all gone through.
And that's certainly true for trans women who are are older and grew up in a time unlike today where so many young trans children are recognizing their trans characteristics and are able to come out earlier. But for those who grew up in an earlier time in the 80s and 90s and 2000 and could not be true to themselves, they probably did have to go through these boys men's locker room scenarios and listen to those same words. Tell us how we can get some of these organizations, how can we help some of these organizations be open to displaying this work of art?
One of my mentors in this project has expressed to me that it's going to require patience and how things work. I'm running a nonprofit organization for the first time in my life. I come from corporate, where in the corporate world you are the dictator.
Yep.
You decide how quickly things are, and it's a very this is a very different world. And it requires an inordinate amount of patience. And one of the things that I didn't have going into this, or that I didn't realize I needed more of, was patience. So these men's organizations, I do believe, will come around. They will get involved. I know they will. It's just requiring patience. That this piece doesn't come in to replace what they're doing. It pays homage to what they're doing. This isn't an awareness campaign. And I wanted to, there was somebody else who called it an awareness campaign. And I was like, no, this isn't awareness, because we're already aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that I'm trying to go, oh, hey, guess what? Partner violence and gender-based violence exists, and I'm providing awareness to this. This is far beyond that. This is now an initiative, and it is somewhat steeped in my love of horror. And I had one city councilor express it to me that it seemed like the way that this had been developed, and with the imagery and with the tone of this, is that it's like a Circus Midway house of horrors. And I was like, that's a fantastic explanation, because it does have that element. For me, the horror films are where I went for refuge. Because it was
a lot of queer
predictable.
people do.
Horror
I was
films
one.
We're huge horror fans, because there is a formula to it. We know how it's going to go. We know what the beginning is. We know what the middle is. We know how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a predictable amount of horror that we're like, we can take this on. And we know how it's going to end, because the bad guy always gets taken out. Or the bad guy, it ends on something else. But when we go home, or we're dealing with this in our real lives, the horror is unpredictable. There's no way to predict how something is going to turn out, or what your dad is going to do tonight, or what your bully is going to do tomorrow. Those sort of things, that unpredictability, is, I think, what draws gay people to horror, is that there is the heroine, there is the hero, there is this predictable formula that we attach ourselves to even to the bad guys, because the bad guys are venerated. And it's like, we look at, I go to a horror film festival every year, because that's just my genre. And so this entire piece has that flavor. It's meant to, because it's predictable. I wanted to have predictable horror.
And the horror, I think, helps maybe.
That was a bit of a tangent.
No, but it was a telling tangent, right? Because as we mentioned, there's so many people in the queer community who in their youth were drawn to horror. And sometimes it's the horror, it takes horror to drive the message home in a way that being polite about it can't. If transformation of dangerous spaces could manifest as a permanent public policy, what would it look like?
On its own, in some of my materials and my presentations, I talk about this piece as being not just an art installation, but it's policy in motion. It's meant to go alongside both gender-based violence initiatives that cities and towns and communities are pulling in together. Like there's a lot of it going on throughout North America where communities are developing policies because the statistics, regardless of all the awareness campaigns, are remain static. And I can only talk about Canadian statistics. In 2024, there was over 163,000 reported incidents of intimate partner violence and gender-based violence. And when you break that down, that's like almost one every 4 minutes.
Mm.
Those numbers are mind-boggling. And then there's a huge swath that just go unreported. And these are by women. And then there's another, 30, 35% that go unreported. So we're looking at this as an item for young men and boys to go into, again, to kind of have this idea of like, oh yeah, no, this is, again, I need to put it in front of them. I need municipalities and I need cities and galleries and civic spaces and universities to bring this into their spaces so that they can have access to it as part of some grander plan, as part of gender-based violence policies that municipalities are developing as a compendium. But on its own, I'm always trying to make sure that, I'm not getting too far in the weeds with it on the policy side, because it is an art piece to me. But where it's being taken and how it's growing and what it's turning into is far more of a more aggressive initiative than I had originally anticipated when I went into this, because this was a wonderful gift, a sad gift that started from grief, that was born from grief, but I'm doing something very good with it, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of how it's turned out and what people's response, and like even your response and bringing me on here means a lot to me. And that's, one of the nice things from the stroke is that I cry really easily. I feel things very deeply now. It rewired my brain in a way that, who I am now by comparison to who I was previous to the stroke is vastly different. And I recognize that these are two different people, where I was pre-stroke and where I am now. That how I see things and how I feel things and how I experience things, all these little things have a really deep resonance with me. Even these conversations like this conversation with you, David, these things mean a lot to me. And it's, the fact that you brought me on here to talk about this makes me, I'm doing the right thing. This is the right thing. I'm doing this right.
I think you are, and I hope that the right thing definitely comes out of it. And kind of
I
on
believe
that,
so.
we talked a little bit earlier about impermanence with
Yes.
regard to some of the other art pieces you're doing that are decaying themselves. What impermanence do you think comes out of transformation of dangerous spaces?
Where I see this is more in the decay or the entropy of systems that fail men and the same systems that fail women, these systems that will erode. That this is meant to help hasten that erosion of the education of this toxic masculinity education. We need to point fingers at them and point it out for them to go away. If we keep them hidden away and we don't point them out and talk about them, they continue to thrive. They take oxygen. But once you point them out, you can take away the oxygen, you can take away the attention, and these things eventually will start to erode. And these systems and these ideas that men have about how women are to be treated or how gay people are to be treated or how trans people are to be treated will dissolve. But it takes time and it takes initiative and it takes a lot of people to stand up and step up to make that stuff happen. And this podcast is one of them. Like you are breaking down systems. Every show that you produce, every meeting I have is meant to do that. I think that all of this together, all of us together in this, are breaking these systems down and creating an impermanence, because this can't last. We can't last like this. This is
No,
an impossible task. We
we
just
definitely can't.
cannot believe that this is going to. We can't. We just cannot. And we have to just say it. We all have to say it. We cannot let this continue.
To young queer artists early in their artistic careers wrestling with impermanence, what's one ritual or mindset that helps you embrace entropy as liberation that you could share with them?
I'd first start by saying, don't have a stroke. Like, don't have your life. Don't just like that's. I don't. It's highly not
Don't
recommend
recommend the
it.
stroke. Noted.
I don't recommend that part, but if it does happen, lean into it. But the for queer artists, or even just create art, create good art. Focus more on the work. Focus on the work rather than the persona. What you're creating early on. And like, I'll be really straight with you. It's like, like I'm 52 and it's taken me till now to create something like this. And I don't think I could have done this level in my 20s or even in my early 30s. I don't think that would have been possible. I have a wealth of experiences that have contributed to how this has come about. However, as a gay artist and as a queer artist, if you're going out in the world, it's create the art first. The artwork doesn't have identity unless you impose it on it. But it's meant to be good work first. Focus on creating really good work and create a lot of it, because you never know. You never know which one is going to be the one that hits. You kind of have to treat it like throwing paint against a wall and what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
But just create for the sake of creating, without an agenda or without anything to be imposed on top of it, because it should be able to live on its own. And there are some incredibly talented young artists and incredibly talented young people that may not necessarily know that they're an artist, that have something in them. But write it down. Start by writing.
Just make
That's
the
where I
art.
started. I just started by writing. Yeah, just create the art. Just go at it. Just, pick up a hammer and nails and just go create something.
Yep.
Who cares?
The best advice that
That's
you can
it.
give. All right. So
Just do what, yeah.
We've reached the end of our interview here, so we're going to go through our quick 10 questions for artists.
Oh, right on. I'm looking forward to this. Great.
So if you're ready, I'll get started. What is your favorite artistic medium or tool?
Whoa. So for the majority of my career, it was light, creating lights, creating with light. That was where I was at. Now it's interdisciplinary, and I don't have any one favorite. But the first half of my career, the first part of my career, I was creating things that held light. It was just one of those things that it was just so pretty that regardless of the room that it was in, I always treated light and lighting like it was the top hat on Fred Astaire. That you can have this wonderful space and this wonderful dance, but the top hat was lighting.
Yep. What artistic trend or cliche do you wish would disappear?
Artistic trend or cliche? Man, that's a really hard one. I'm not sure.
People struggle with this one.
There's so much that it is what it is, just for this, what it is, even if it is a cliche, large scale contemporary art installations, that are derivative of others. I think derivative work, I think that's where I would be. If it's original and cliche, fantastic. But if you're creating something and it's derivative of something that's already in existence, yeah, that can go away, because we don't need any more of that. Create something original and cliche.
What fuels your creativity the most?
What fuels my creativity the most? My environment right now, because I live very rurally, and I have resources, and I get to just kind of do whatever I want and create what I want. That's what fuels me, is my own autonomy, that I'm not beholden to anybody else. I'm not beholden to somebody's paycheck, but my autonomy in this world right now fuels my creativity.
What sound or noise instantly inspires you?
I listen to a lot of house music. So I get really inspired by gospel house. That really gets me going. I grew up in a rave era in the early '90s, and I was a club kid for a while. So for me, house music is like especially gospel house just gets me going every day. That's how I start my day and end my day.
What sound or noise completely kills your focus?
Chewing.
Chewing.
I have misophonia, so
Uh, That's when you are irritated by the sound of someone else's chewing, I think.
chewing, breathing, anything. I
what
live alone.
What's your favorite word or phrase to include in your work, literally or metaphorically?
Keep it weird.
Keep it weird.
Keep it weird.
If you
Keep
could
it
see
weird.
any queer artist, living or dead, honored with a major public monument, who would it be?
Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde.
He
Do you
had
like
some.
him?
He used to write under a nom de plume, and he had some really wild books. But if there would be one person that that could do with with more recognition just for what he was able to do for gay people moving forward, like it's Oscar Wilde. If you ever want an education, go read Oscar Wilde books.
Yep. He does some
Go some
amazing stuff.
history lessons.
What is one?
He knows Oscar Wilde and Truman Capote. Truman Capote would
Oh,
be the
he'd be
next
another
one.
good
If you
one.
want to
Yep.
read some incredible letters, oh my God, Truman Capote. You want an education?
Not
Those are the
without his
two. Those are the
scandals
two
for
guys to
sure,
look at.
but definitely.
True.
Yeah. What is one profession or creative field you could never see yourself in?
I would not want to. I don't ever want to work for anybody. I haven't had a regular 9 to 5 job since I was in my 20s. So we're going on 30 plus years. I don't think I could work for anybody,
Yeah.
period,
You're
in
your own
any
boss at this point.
facet. I have been my own boss for so long. I'm good to, I'm very good to myself. I don't think that I could work in any industry where I had to be responsible, no.
Yeah. That goes back to that whole autonomy thing, I think.
Yep.
If your art could take on a life of its own, what form would it take?
The next, because of the where I want, what I want for, with one of the other ones, which is an actual stage play that I'm writing with an author, a playwright here in Canada. His name is Michael Best, and he's an award-winning playwright. And he's helping me write a play. So really, where I would like to see this go, like to see, I would like to be in the theater.
I think there might be a little
There's something
theater and
dramatic. There's just something.
transformation of Dangerous Spaces.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, but there's just something. There's just the drama of being on a stage and being in front of people and speaking lines that have been written for you. There's a romance to that,
Mm-hmm.
and having people be part of it. Like theater is like the original immersive art.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interactive and it's playful and there's feedback and all of this stuff that I think that the theater is really where I would like to see all of my work move into theater. And I think there's a bit of theater behind everything that I'm creating.
And finally, 100 years from now, what do you hope your art says about you to those who find it?
I'm going to repeat something I said earlier. In the first part of my career, I did very well. I've done very well. I have to be honest. I did very well. But did I do a lot of good? No. This is meant to be good in all its format. Like I want to do some good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be remembered as somebody that did good. That's really what I want. The legacy that I want to be able to leave behind is that I did good. I did some good. That's it. I did some good.
I think transformation of Dangerous Spaces will definitely do some good for a lot of people who need to hear it.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I really do appreciate you saying that. It's very nice of you. Thank you.
Christopher, it's been really insightful conversation.
Well, thanks, dude.
Have really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing Transformation of Dangerous Spaces sometime soon.
I do too. And we're going to be doing 30 cities a year, 30 communities a year in Canada for each year, 30 cities between now and 2028. My ultimate goal with the piece is to have it travel the United States as well. I'll be touring around in a 45-foot tour bus with, with following the piece as I go along in a 45-foot billboard. But the ultimate goal is like, I really would like to see this. I'd like to see this travel well beyond my time here.
Well, when it ever comes to Toronto or some other amazing cities in Canada that I would haven't visited yet but would love to, I look forward to finding out so that I can come see it.
You will be invited. I appreciate that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You will be getting an invitation to come and see it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Christopher.
David, you're very good at this. You're very good at this.
Well,
Man.
thank you.
Wow.
Appreciate that feedback. Thanks for joining us in this raw conversation. If this artist's work resonates with you, you can find their social media links in the show notes below. And remember, art thrives when we lift each other up. Tag us at Salon Naturel or hashtag ArtLaRaw with your reactions. We repost listener art every Friday. Unlock uncensored studio tours, erotic art zines, and voting power on future guests by joining our Substack or Patreon. Links below. If this episode sparked something in you, leave a 5-star review with the word RAW in the title. Algorithms hate us, your voice keeps us visible. This episode was produced by Salon Naturel, with editing by David Smith, original theme music by Exicat. And keep making art that terrifies the censors. This is David Smith. Until next time, stay raw, stay rebellious.